In the heart of the Nexari Military Academy, a vast luminescent lecture hall buzzed with energy. Cadets filled the space, their crystalline forms pulsing softly in shades of blue and green. The air hummed with the low sound of their glowing cores, a gentle reminder of their presence. Today marked the beginning of a special study, a deep dive into the chaotic world of human warfare. The instructor, a respected figure among the Nexari, stood before a massive holographic display. He emphasized the stark differences between Nexari tactics and those of the primitive humans. The hall fell silent as he projected images from a global conflict on Earth, the Second World War. The bright visuals painted a grim picture. Smoke billowed, fires raged, and bodies lay strewn across battlefields. Humanity's conflicts are marked by chaos, the instructor explained, his luminescent patterns flickering in disdain. Their strategies lack order. They rely on brute force and irrational decisions. Cadet Lyra sat near the front, her eyes wide with curiosity and confidence. She believed in the superiority of Nexari tactics, honed through logic and precision. Her core shimmered with excitement as she absorbed the information. The Nexari had the gift of foresight, planning each movement with meticulous care. She thought humans would falter against such brilliance. As they discussed the footage, the room buzzed with discussions and confident assertions. Lyra and her classmates boasted about their training. They felt superior in their ability to calculate outcomes. But then, a new clip played. It showed a human soldier charging into battle, blood streaming from a severe injury. His eyes held a fierce determination. The room stilled. Lyra felt a flicker of uncertainty. Why would a soldier fight like that? The Nexari valued logic, yet this human acted on sheer willpower. The instructor moved on, dismissing the moment. But Lyra's mind raced with questions. The presentation continued, but something shifted in the air. Lyra's curiosity turned into intrigue. Her fellow cadets spoke about human tactics, sure of their own superiority. They drew sharp comparisons between their own precise energy formations and the clumsy nature of human warfare. But Lyra couldn't shake the image of that soldier. Days passed as the cadets dove deeper into their study. They analyzed more footage, each piece revealing the stark contrast between their two species. Each clip showcased chaos in different forms, yet Lyra found herself fascinated by the raw energy of human combat. One evening, the stars shone brightly outside the academy, each pinprick of light mirroring the glow from the cadets. Lyra reflected on what they had seen. The images of human soldiers fighting against overwhelming odds haunted her thoughts. As she turned to her classmates, she saw their unwavering confidence. They spoke of how humans were lost in their emotions, how they allowed unpredictability to dictate their actions. Lyra wanted to agree, yet that soldier kept appearing in her mind. The next class began with an analysis of a pivotal battle where human forces faced a towering enemy. The Nexari students watched intently, expecting to find weakness in the human tactics. Instead, they saw creativity emerge amid chaos. One soldier rallied his comrades, igniting hope in a moment of despair. The Nexari cadets felt a shift in the room, a subtle ripple of unease. Lyra's heart raced. She could not dismiss the bravery that unfolded before her. Each frame revealed human resilience. They fought not just with weapons, but with spirit. Her confidence wobbled as she began to see the strength in what she once considered weakness. The final bell rang, echoing through the hall. The cadets filed out, their crystalline bodies flickering softly. Lyra lingered, drawn to the display. She felt the weight of the world pressing down, a mix of admiration, fear, and confusion. As she gazed up, her core pulsing with thoughts, she realized this study was more than an academic exercise. It was a glimpse into a different kind of strength. The Nexari excelled in logic, but humans thrived on resilience. The day ended, but Lyra knew this was only the beginning. In her heart, she felt a shift, a breaking of assumptions. The Nexari had much to learn. Humanity's chaotic spirit promised a truth they had long overlooked. As Lyra left the hall, a new determination flickered within her. Something profound lingered in the air, waiting to be discovered. The luminescent lecture hall buzzed with whispers. Cadets shifted in their seats, excitement mixing with uncertainty. They had just watched footage of human soldiers. The chaos of battle played out on the screen, a stark contrast to their orderly lives. Lyra's crystalline body pulsed with a bright blue light, reflecting her emotions. She felt a mix of fascination and confusion. Why did humans fight so hard, even when severely injured? The footage showed a soldier with a shattered leg. He limped forward, determination etched on his face. A Nexari instructor explained how humans had an unusual concept called honor. Lyra squinted, her crystalline eyes narrowing. Why would any being choose to fight when their body was breaking? She shared curious glances with her fellow cadets. They all felt this new sensation, a crack in their understanding. The footage continued. Soldiers fought on, despite fatal wounds. The sounds of gunfire and explosions filled the air. Lyra noticed the sheer willpower in the faces of those soldiers. Each human displayed an emotional depth that Nexari did not understand. Her heart raced, a strange feeling for a Nexari. She thought of her own training, where logic and precision reigned supreme. Why? And the story continued, one cadet asked, his light flickering in a puzzled pattern. The question hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. They were taught to analyze, to dissect strategies without emotion. Yet this human resilience felt foreign. Lyra pondered the soldier's bravery, contrasting it with her own upbringing. Nexari logic never allowed for such chaos. Footage shifted to another scene. A soldier pushed through pain, fighting even as blood pooled around him. The instructor attempted to explain this phenomenon. Humans seemed to embrace suffering, almost inviting it. The cadets shared uneasy glances. They had always viewed warfare as a calculated game. But these humans acted with a passion they could not grasp. Lyra's mind raced. Was this the reason for their tireless fury on the battlefield? Did their emotions fuel their strength? The idea unsettled her. She had been certain of Nexari's superiority. Now she found herself questioning everything. Other cadets expressed their disbelief, their lights dimming in uncertainty. Emotions are chaotic, another cadet said, attempting to maintain their stance. Yet the footage pressed on, revealing more. Scenes flickered of soldiers rallying their comrades, igniting hope amid despair. The sounds of their calls echoed in the hall, a call to arms against overwhelming odds. Lyra felt a warmth surge through her. The bravery in those voices resonated deep within her core. As the analysis continued, the cadets began to discuss the human concept of resilience. Lyra listened closely, her mind racing to keep pace. Why would they continue to fight when survival seemed impossible? The Nexari had been taught that survival was paramount. Yet here, the humans displayed a different mindset. They fought with loyalty, often laying down their lives for others. Lyra shifted in her seat, the crystalline surface beneath her pulsing with her thoughts. The footage displayed a soldier with shattered bones, still charging into enemy lines. The scene was powerful, the desperation palpable. The Nexari cadets struggled to find words. They had always viewed strength as composure and logic. Now they faced a raw, unpredictable force that demanded respect. The instructor guided them through the analysis, detailing the psychological impact of such bravery. Lyra's understanding began to expand. The human willingness to fight despite severe injuries revealed a fierce tenacity she had never considered. What drives them? Lyra thought. The answer eluded her. She looked around at her peers. Their expressions mirrored her own confusion. A sense of unease hung in the air. The cadets had built their identities on logic. Yet this emotional resilience torn down walls they had thought unshakable. As the footage transitioned to interviews with surviving soldiers, Lyra felt the weight of their words. Each soldier spoke of their comrades, of the bonds formed in battle. They talked about honor, courage, and the fierce desire to protect. The emotions were evident in their voices. Lyra could almost feel the warmth of their camaraderie, the echoes of their sacrifices resonating off the crystalline walls. Lyra's light flickered with intensity. She began to admire these humans. They represented a strength that went beyond physical might. It was a strength rooted in emotional connections, a web of loyalty that bound them together. This realization shook her confidence, but it also stirred a newfound fascination. As the lecture concluded, Lyra felt different. Nexari cadets had initially viewed this study with superiority. Now they confronted a profound truth. Human resilience was a force that defied logic. They had begun to grasp the depths of humanity's spirit, something that transcended their own understanding of warfare. The cadets left the hall in silence, their minds racing. Outside, the vibrant Nexari skies glittered above them, pulsing with color. Yet, the beauty of their home felt muted compared to the shadows of what they had just learned. Lyra struggled to articulate her thoughts, feeling a battle within herself. The insights they gained today challenged everything she had been taught. As Lyra walked, she replayed the images in her mind. The soldier with the shattered leg, the rallying cries, the bonds formed in the heat of chaos. She could still hear the distant echoes of gunfire, feel the weight of sacrifice pressing down. It was overwhelming yet enlightening. Resolute, Lyra felt that her journey was only just beginning. The Nexari were about to embark on an exploration of a world that thrived on unpredictability. The hum of their crystalline cores matched the rhythm of her thoughts. An uncharted territory lay ahead, one that would challenge their understanding of strength, sacrifice, and what it meant to be a soldier. And with that thought, Lyra's confidence flickered, now a mix of admiration and curiosity. As they delved into the complexities of humanity, she knew they would begin to rewrite their understanding of warfare, forever changed by the unyielding spirit of humans. As the Nexari cadets settled into their luminescent seats, a quiet unease filled the air. They had just witnessed human soldiers enduring tremendous pain and fighting despite horrific injuries. The resilience of these humans stirred something deep within Cadet Lyra. Her heart pulsed rapidly, a sensation she seldom felt. She could not shake the image of the soldier dragging himself forward with a shattered leg. It made her think, made her question. Today's lecture was different. The instructor, a tall, crystalline Nexari named Vorthan, focused on the recent wars on Earth. He presented data on human tactics, especially guerrilla warfare. These tactics often discarded the Nexari values of logic and survival. Instead, the humans placed mission success above their own lives. Lyra stared at the holographic projections of battles. Each image was vivid and chaotic. She studied the faces of the soldiers who sacrificed themselves, eyes filled with determination. They moved with purpose, not for themselves, but for something greater. It was foreign, yet oddly captivating. In her upbringing, the idea of self-sacrifice for a cause was absurd. The hum of the energy cores filled the hall as Vorthan continued. In this analysis, we see that human soldiers often accept death as part of victory. He projected a scene of soldiers charging a fortified position, knowing they might not return. Gasps echoed around the room. Lyra could feel the weight of disbelief in the air. The Nexari had always viewed warfare through a lens of logic. Their strategies relied on crystal formations and precise energy blasts. The thought of warriors willingly choosing to die for a cause seemed reckless, yet here was evidence to the contrary. Here was a trait the Nexari could not understand. Humans fought not just for victory, but for honor, for others. Lyra's mind raced. How could these beings act so counter to their survival instincts? She turned to her fellow cadets, their glowing forms reflecting confusion and intrigue. One cadet, Tolan, shimmered slightly as he spoke. Why would they risk everything? Their lives are valuable. As the discussions erupted, Lyra felt a storm within her. She recalled the earlier footage of broken soldiers. Their determination was not just a display of physical strength. It came from something deeper, a purpose that transcended their very being. The concept of honor, Lyra mused internally, what does it mean for them? She pondered how the Nexari, with their logical minds, might never grasp this fiery resolve. The noise of the lecture hall faded. Lyra's thoughts drifted back to the soldier she had seen before. He charged forward, face twisted in pain, yet pushing through, driven by a force she could not name. The smell of smoke and gunpowder filled her senses, almost palpable as she imagined it. The heat of battle seemed to radiate even from her memories. Vorthan brought the class back to focus with a sharp gesture of his hand. He turned toward them, blue-green light swirling around him. We must now analyze the implications of these tactics. If humans are willing to sacrifice themselves, how can we view them in battle? The weight of his questions sat heavily on Lyra's shoulders. She felt unsettled. The Nexari had always dismissed humans as chaotic and inferior, but here they were, faced with a truth that shattered their assumptions. If humans viewed death as an acceptable cost, what did that say about their approach to warfare? That means they are unpredictable, another cadet, Xeon, offered. They do not fight to survive, they fight to win. They can become more dangerous when cornered. Silence fell over the room. Lyra could almost hear the steady pulse of her crystalline core. It felt like the recognition of an impending realization. The Nexari had been taught to avoid chaos and protect their own lives. Yet, could they learn to adapt? Would they be able to embrace the unpredictability of human nature? Lyra remembered their earlier discussions about human creativity in battle. It was a stark contrast to the Nexari's orderly strategies. She closed her eyes, imagining the struggles of human soldiers in dire situations. Ideas poured through her mind, connecting like glowing threads. Humans thrive under pressure, she thought. When the odds are against them, they push back, rallying together. The sound of gunfire echoed in her memory, the cries of soldiers merging into one symphony of chaos. The lecture ended, but Lyra remained lost in thought. The holographic images swirled around her, a reminder of the cost of human conflict. Each sacrifice defined them, shaped their identity. She could no longer view humans as simple beings. They were complex, woven from threads of bravery and courage. As she exited the lecture hall, Lyra felt a surge of determination. She needed to understand this deeper connection to humanity. The Nexari had long prided themselves on their logical superiority, but perhaps strength lay not only in strategy, but in the heart, the willingness to sacrifice for a greater cause. Her fellow cadets buzzed with conversation. They had begun to grapple with this new perspective. They questioned everything they knew, their glimmering forms reflecting uncertainty and hope. Lyra felt a sense of camaraderie with them. They were all experiencing a transformation, one that would redefine their understanding of war. As she walked through the corridors, the glassy walls shimmered like the night sky. Lyra inhaled deeply, the scent of crystal and energy swirling in the air. Each breath felt heavier with the burden of newfound knowledge. The Nexari had always relied on rigid strategies, yet the humans displayed a different kind of strength. A strength born from adversity, a strength that could not be calculated. In her heart, Lyra knew that this journey would not just change their military tactics, it would alter their very essence. With each revelation, she felt more drawn toward the complexity of human nature. She could sense a bridge forming between their worlds, a connection built on respect and understanding. As the luminescent lights flickered above her, Lyra vowed to embrace the lesson unfolding before her. It was time to learn not just from their strengths, but from their sacrifices. The Nexari would soon understand, true power lay not in the absence of chaos, but in the courage to face it head-on. In the luminescent halls of the Nexari Military Academy, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Cadets gathered, their crystalline bodies shimmering in shades of blue and green. They reflected on what they had learned so far about humans. Their study had turned from mere curiosity to a deeper examination of human resilience. Now, they delved into a new revelation. Humans become more dangerous when faced with overwhelming odds. The room darkened as the main screen lit up. Images of the Battle of Stalingrad filled the space. The scenes were chaotic, steeped in smoke and fear. Cadet Lyra felt a tightness in her chest. She had seen battles before, but nothing compared to the raw emotion captured in these moments. The sounds of distant gunfire and cries echoed in her mind. Here, humans fought back against a relentless enemy. They were outnumbered, yet they pressed on. Lyra's eyes widened as she watched a group of soldiers rallying together. They were weary, their uniforms tattered and stained. But amidst the chaos, a soldier stood tall, calling out to his comrades. His voice boomed over the noise, igniting a flicker of hope. Lyra could sense the determination radiating off the screen. This was not merely a fight for survival, it was a fight for each other. The Nexari were puzzled. Why did humans thrive under such stress? Cadet Thurin leaned forward, his crystalline form flickering with curiosity. Their instincts drive them, he mused. They act unpredictably. But how can chaos lead to victory? Lyra considered this. The soldiers were not following a plan. They were adapting. They used their surroundings. They turned debris into cover. They transformed fear into strength. The Nexari preferred order, precise calculations, and logical strategies. Yet here lay a new truth. Humans thrived in the storm. They found ways to overcome despair. The footage shifted to another critical moment. A human soldier, injured and bleeding, led his team in a counterattack against enemy forces. Lyra felt her heart race as she witnessed the soldier push through pain. The others followed, inspired by his bravery. They moved as one, though each was driven by personal stakes. Lyra realized that humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other. It was a concept foreign to her. Nexari tactics emphasized the survival of the group above all else, driven by cold logic. Yet here was a different kind of strength. Cadets began discussing, their soft light pulsing with uncertainty. Is it madness? Thurin asked, or is it a strategic advantage? Lyra's hands trembled. I feel a connection, she replied. They can ignite courage in each other. Their bonds make them stronger. She was surprised by her words. They echoed in her mind, entwined with her thoughts. As the cadets analyzed more battles, a pattern emerged. Humans frequently faced impossible situations. They were often outgunned and outnumbered, yet they found pathways to victory. The more they were cornered, the more dangerous they became. In the midst of despair, they adapted and innovated. Finally, they watched a sequence from the Vietnam War. A small group of soldiers, surrounded by a vast enemy force, found themselves trapped. The tension was palpable. Everything seemed lost. Yet instead of surrender, they fought back fiercely. Their creativity shone through. They set traps and ambushes, using the jungle to their advantage. The screen flickered with images of soldiers working together. They relied on each other, forming a cohesive unit. Lyra felt an overwhelming sense of admiration. Here, chaos transformed into a symphony of strategy. This was not just war, it was artistry. The human spirit surged in the face of defeat. A realization began to dawn on her. The Nexari had always viewed warfare through the lens of logic, but humans thrived on emotion, creativity, and an unpredictable nature. It was a stark contrast. The Nexaris' rigid formations and calculated strikes paled when faced with human adaptability. As the analysis concluded, Lyra looked around at her fellow cadets. The room, once filled with confidence, now buzzed with introspection. They were grappling with a new understanding of strength. The Nexari had viewed themselves as superior, yet the depths of human resilience were shattering that belief. Can we learn from them? Thurin asked, voice barely above a whisper. Can we incorporate this unpredictability into our strategies? Lyra pondered this. We must. Their strength lies not just in numbers or tactics, but in their spirit. She felt something shift within her, a re-evaluation of her beliefs. This was not just an academic exercise anymore. This was a door to understanding. As the lights brightened, the cadets began to discuss how they could adapt their own strategies to incorporate this newfound respect for human ingenuity. Lyra's mind raced with ideas. Could they design training simulations that embraced the unpredictable? Could they teach future cadets to harness emotion as a weapon? For days, Lyra and her peers debated. They proposed a new approach that valued flexibility and creativity. They imagined scenarios that mirrored human experiences. They began to see the Nexari not as conquerors, but as learners. The lessons humans offered were vast. With every passing moment, Lyra felt herself change. She was no longer just an ambitious cadet. She was part of something bigger. The Nexari were evolving. Their understanding of war, once rigid, was beginning to shift. The respect for human resilience transformed their perspective, and the realization sparked a hope for what could come next. The study of humans was no longer a simple academic pursuit. It became a crucial turning point. Lyra knew they had to embrace this journey. In the depths of the universe, there was much to learn from those who seemed so different. The Nexari were ready to rewrite their understanding of strength. As they prepared their findings, Lyra felt a blend of fear and excitement. They were on the verge of something new. The images of human struggle and resilience would guide them. The Nexari had encountered a truth that shattered their understanding of warfare. Now, they stood ready to embrace it. The luminescent walls of the Nexari lecture hall glimmered softly as Cadet Lyra and her classmates gathered for their final analysis. The air thrummed with anticipation. They had immersed themselves in human warfare for weeks. Now, the weight of their discoveries pressed heavily on their minds. Lyra recalled the images they had seen. Human soldiers charging into chaos, driven by pain and injury. The determination in their eyes struck her deeply. These were not just fighters. They were warriors who embraced their struggles. The Nexari had always valued logic and order, but here, in their studies of humans, they began to see a different kind of strength. As the cadets prepared to present their findings, a wave of uncertainty washed over Lyra. How could she explain the acceptance of death? In their discussions, they had analyzed battles where humans achieved victory at great costs. They had witnessed soldiers charging into certain death. For the Nexari, such behavior seemed illogical. Yet here, humanity's acceptance of sacrifice revealed a new meaning. Lyra stood at the front, her crystalline form shimmering nervously. She had watched her comrades grapple with the weight of their findings. The Nexari, who had once dismissed human actions as chaotic, now struggled to understand the depth of human bravery. Their logic was faltering. A tension filled the room, thick like the scent of ozone after a storm. Their willingness to sacrifice for a greater good, Lyra began, her voice steadying, challenges everything we understand about strength. She gestured to a screen displaying vivid images of human soldiers fighting against overwhelming odds. We once believed that survival is paramount, but humans show us a different truth. They fight not just for themselves, but for each other and their beliefs. The cadets exchanged glances, their luminous bodies flickering with confusion and admiration. Lyra's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Human soldiers, she explained, faced death with courage. They viewed it not as an end, but as a necessary step toward victory. This realization shook their foundations. The Nexari had prided themselves on their logical strategies, but this raw, emotional truth was alien to them. As the presentation continued, Lyra highlighted specific battles. The Battle of Stalingrad stood out. The presentation showed how human forces, undermanned and outgunned, refused to surrender. They adapted under pressure, crafting strategies in the midst of chaos. Lyra spoke of the bravery shown by a single soldier who rallied his comrades. The way he led them amidst despair ignited hope. With each slide, Lyra felt a shift within her. The Nexari had always seen themselves as superior, masters of order. Yet here was something they lacked: the emotional depth to understand that sometimes fighting against the odds is part of a greater struggle. The essence of their findings crystallized into a startling truth. Humanity thrived when cornered. The room fell silent as Lyra finished. Her heart raced, echoing the pulse of her crystalline core. The other cadets processed her words. They had witnessed human resilience. They had seen how the chaos of battle unveiled their true strength. The Nexari, who had initially viewed humans as primitive, now stared into a mirror reflecting their own vulnerabilities. In that silence, an epiphany loomed. The Nexari cadets began to see that to fight with honor, to accept sacrifice, was a profound display of courage. Lyra's understanding blossomed into respect, revealing a path they had never considered. The Nexari would need to rethink their approach to warfare. How do we incorporate this understanding into our strategies? One cadet whispered, breaking the silence. The question hung in the air, igniting a flurry of ideas. Lyra felt her heart swell. This was a moment of unity, a shift in thinking. They were not just studying humans, they were beginning to embrace their complexity. The Nexari had always thrived on precision, but now they pondered how emotion could play a role in strategy. Their rigid doctrines began to bend. Lyra stood taller. She had transformed from a confident cadet into a pioneer of a new mindset. The weight of human sacrifice weighed heavily, but it also offered a new perspective. As the presentation concluded, the cadets gathered their thoughts. The air buzzed with energy. They had experienced a revelation. The Nexari would honor human tenacity and bravery. They would exchange their rigid logic for adaptability. They would learn to embrace the emotional nuances of combat. This new understanding marked a turning point. Lyra felt a sense of hope for future relations. The darkness of their previous beliefs began to fade, replaced by the potential for collaboration. The Nexari's study of human warfare shattered their previous notions. It opened the door to a future where understanding could lead to unity between species. Lyra smiled, her crystalline core glowing brighter with the promise of what lay ahead. The luminescent walls of the Nexari Military Academy glowed softly as the cadets gathered for the final review. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Cadet Lyra stood at the center, her crystalline body shimmering in shades of blue and green. The air buzzed with energy, but it felt different this time. The cadets were no longer just discussing human warfare, they were ready to embrace its lessons. The Nexari leadership arrived, their crystalline forms casting vibrant light patterns across the room. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had worked hard to compile the findings. The brutal revelations from human warfare echoed in her mind. Soldiers who fought despite injury, tactics that valued mission over survival, humans who emerged stronger when cornered. Each discovery had chipped away at her past beliefs of Nexari superiority. As the leaders listened, Lyra spoke of the human heart. She described the unwavering determination of soldiers who fought against tremendous odds. They pushed through pain, driven by something deeper. Her voice trembled with passion. The leaders exchanged glances, their luminous eyes reflecting a flicker of understanding. One leader, bright with authority, nodded slowly. "Emotional intelligence could redefine our strategies," he stated. Lyra felt hope swell inside her. She recognized this moment as a turning point, not just for her but for her people. A new doctrine was emerging, one that blended the logic of the Nexari with the emotional courage of humans. Days passed as the new strategy evolved. Soon, the Nexari military was ready to integrate human principles. They would train their soldiers to embrace adaptability over rigid tactics. A new division was established, led by Lyra herself. This division was dedicated to studying human life. The goal was to foster understanding and build bridges for future relations. The academies thrummed with excitement. The Nexari were ready to learn from humanity, ready to respect the organic life they once dismissed. The air sparkled with a new energy, one that held the promise of unity. Lyra smiled, her heart full of hope.